Today we're going to be talking about grouping principles. As we go over the notes today, make sure you guys are paying attention because of the picture project where you guys are going to have to find examples of these in the real world. So as you're looking through this and taking notes, think about, where can you, find these in your everyday life. Visual capture, right? Dominance of vision over the other senses in creating perception. So make sure you know vision is your most dominant sense. All right, so it's your most dominant sense. If you lose vision, you often even like lose your balance and things like that. So just make sure you know that that dominates your other senses. Figure ground is the ability to separate an object from its surrounding field. So if you look at the picture on the left, what do you see there? Do you see chess pieces or do you see people? Most people say they see chess pieces. Sometimes it's hard to see people. Well, if you look here closely, right, the outline here, that's a face, and this is their body, right? So that's the back of their head, and that's their body. So this person's leaning in, and this person's leaning towards them. That's their face, it's the back of their head, and that's their body right there. So sometimes you can't see it at first, but if you look at the right way, you can. Look at the picture on the right. What do you see there? A tree? Or do you see the outline of two animals, right? You got a gorilla right here, and then the lion over here. So lots of different examples throughout. So a lot of times if you're looking for examples for your project, logos have a lot of these examples. I just saw a new one, like this chess piece one, in some art that someone actually did recently. So here's some other examples of figure ground. What language do you see here? What language is that? When I first saw it, I couldn't tell, but then if you look and just focus on the black, it actually says Jesus. What about this one right here? This bookshelf. Does it look like a weird language, or can you see the words at all? Just looks like a bookshelf, but it actually says read your bookcase. All right, so that's, these are examples of figure ground. So other examples. Look at the one on the left. Is he facing at you, or is he facing to the right? Notice how your brain can't see it both ways. You can only see one or the other. It looks like it flipped, just like we've talked about before, but it doesn't. It can't show you both at the same time. But look at it. Is it at you or to the right? Look at the one on the right. What do we see here? A leaf, or is it soldiers marching? So here's some other figure around. What do you see on the left? A vase, or do you actually see two faces facing each other, right? So you got the forehead, the nose, the mouth, and then same thing on this side. What about on the right? Do you see a lady? Or do you see a guy playing a saxophone with a bird flying? And when we meet in person, there's a lot of, throughout this notes, there's a lot of links that I can show you other examples of. All right, gestalt. Gestalt means whole. All right, it means whole, which is the tendency to integrate pieces of information into meaningful wholes. And so these are all the examples we're going to be talking about. Proximity, similarity, continuity, closure, simplicity, and connectedness. And what this does, it takes different pieces of something, but yet your mind puts it together, right? It puts, that's called gestalt. That's the whole. First one we're going to talk about is proximity. So this occurs when elements are placed close together. They tend to be perceived as a group. So if you look at the one on the left here, what do you see here? Did anyone say a square? Well, that's because of proximity, right? You have 36 white circles here, but yet instead of saying 36 white circles, most people say, oh, there's a square there. And that's because we group things that are close together. Now look at these over here. What do you see? Most people would say, I see three, like rectangles. Because we group like things close together. once again, you have 36 white circles here, but because, these 12 are close together, these 12 are close together, and these 12 are close together, we group them together. Another example of proximity, right? You got the 10 squares above are placed without proximity, so they're perceived as being separate, right? So they just look like 10 separate squares. But if you put them together, like you see on the right here, when they're in close proximity, unity occurs. So while they continue to be separate shapes, they are now perceived as one group. Example could be like a cafeteria, right? We tend to group the people sitting by each other together. The next one's similarity, right? This occurs when objects look similar to one another. People often perceive them as a group or a pattern. So once again, we have 36 dots here, but yet we're going to group the white ones together and the black ones together because of similarity. So we tend to group like things together. So the example here, the example above containing 11 distinct objects appears as a single unit because all of the shapes have similarity, right? So you see the triangles to them. So because they all have that triangles coming out, it kind of looks like a sun, and we group it together. Here's an example of a baseball game, right? We see all the Cubs fans wearing Cubs shirts, so we tend to group them together. Even though it's probably in Milwaukee, because there's always more Cubs fans in Milwaukee than Brewers fans. Continuity, right? This occurs when the eye is compelled to move through one object and continue to another object. So you have all these random dots here, but yet our eye follows it, kind of like this, right, and continue to another object. So we see kind of like that cross, that X there. So a lot of times we might see continuity in like a label, a logo like this. So continuation occurs in the example above because the viewer's eye will naturally follow a line or a curve. The smooth flowing crossbar of the H leads the eye directly to the maple leaf. All right, so we could consider this continuity. This is also continuity, just this like alley here, because your eye is going to naturally follow, right, the bend, the curve in the road. Closure occurs when an object is incomplete or a space is not completely enclosed. If enough of the shape is indicated, people perceive the whole by filling in the missing information. All right, so none of these shapes up top are completed, but yet we can tell it's completed by looking at it, right? So the one on the left, we know this is a circle. Even though it's not completed, our mind, our brain fills in the rest. We see the triangle in the middle, and then we see another triangle there, right? So even though they're not complete, our brain completes it. So when you're doing your project, a lot of times people use a recycle bin, right? If you ever seen the recycling symbol, like you kind of see the triangle like that. So you see it in a couple other logos as well. So here in the panda, right? It's not complete, but yet we know it's complete enough where our eye knows it's a panda. So I think this is the like World Wildlife Federation or Fund. Their symbol, I'm not sure. I think Panda Express might have a similar one, but you see this throughout as well. You also see this with like stenciling. I know there's some TTHS around the building that has it, so you can tell the letters what they are even though they're not complete. Simplicity is when several perceptual organizations are possible, the simplest and most stable shape will be perceived. So what do you see here? In this one, most people say they see 3 overlapping squares rather than 2 6-sided objects and 1 4-sided object. So, we see the 3 squares overlapping, but actually, this is a 6-sided object. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And the same with this one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then this one has 4. So you could have said that, but yet that's not what our brain perceives, right? It's always going to perceive the simplest form, the simplest shape possible. What do you see here? Most people say an apple because that's what our brain, that's the easiest thing for our brain to see. The last one, connectedness. Elements that are connected by uniform visual properties are perceived as being more related than elements that are not connected. So you have 6, circles, black circles up here, but yet because they're connected by that little bar, so we say these two are together, these two are together, and these two are together because of connectedness, right? They look like kind of like dumbbells. So you have the same picture left and right, but yet this one on the right looks more connected just because of these little, the little dots, the little connectedness there. Otherwise, on the one on the left, they just look like random things in the picture. But yet, on the one on the right, we know this belongs to her, right? She's saying, "Oh, you've made me so happy. I want to spend the rest of my life with you." And we know he's saying, because of the dots, it's connected. "Oh, I wonder what time the game starts." All right, so something as simple as that can represent connectedness. And last image, last example of connectedness, you just see people holding hands together. So that's always an easy one that people do, right? So we can tell that they are connected.